Well, in order to better appreciate where and what the church is today, I want you to consider for a moment how the Christian movement began. Now, very ironically, but probably fittingly, the church started a long time ago the same way that we commence our worship service every Sunday. It started with announcements. That's right. One day Jesus stood up and he announced, "Hey, I've got good news. The reign, the realm of God, the divine, of heaven, of what you're looking for, the presence of the Spirit of love and truth and beauty and justice, it's a whole lot nearer than you think it is. And you are part of this movement. You can be part of this movement. Whenever you open your heart and your mind, whenever you're learning and growing and relating and being transformed and being changed, that's what that word repent means in the Bible, metanoia. You're changing, you're growing, you're transforming. So an announcement was made, and then it was followed by a directive, and then an invitation. Come, follow me. Become a fellow follower of this way, and you'll have a new mission in life. Instead of being primarily concerned with how many golden fishes you can collect, instead the focus is going to be on people and the world that we're creating for our children, about relationships and about building healthier communities. So the church began in the heart and the mind and the imagination of Jesus of Nazareth. And over the years, the Spirit has shown a relentless resolve, not only to never leave us to our own devices. The church has been through a lot. Some good, some bad. Famines, earthquakes, world wars, depressions, the Inquisition, the Enlightenment, now Facebook. But through it all, the church has kept on growing and evolving. And so now, in order to share something with you about what do we believe about the church, I begin with 3 short vignettes, little stories, that will illustrate, I believe, the central meaning about church. And the first of these is by an Eastern master, recorded in the book The Journey Homeward by the writer Susan Muto. And this is the little vignette. Watch what happens when the gamekeeper puts one carp into a pond that has a stone in the center of the pond, and then puts a second carp of equal size into a pond that has no stone in the center of the pond. In the pond where the stone is, the carp swims around the marker repeatedly in even circles and grows fat and healthy. The carp in the other pond has no central point around which to swim, so it goes in erratic circles, and it becomes emaciated in the process. In the pond where the carp swims round the stone, the carp's movement has pattern and purpose, and therefore the fish grows. In the pond without the stone, the fish has nothing to swim around, and therefore the fish shrinks. As you ponder that parable for yourself, ask yourself, what's at the center of the pond of your life around which you're swimming that's keeping you healthy? Each of us has a spiritual hunger, I truly believe, for some meaning in life. Now, we can ignore that desire, or we can feed it. But it's going to lead us one way or the other on life's journey. If we choose to take the journey, then we need a stone in the middle of our pond. For me, all my life, that stone has been the church. A pivotal point that has provided me rhythm and direction to my life. I didn't always like it as a child, but my gosh, what an impact it made on me. At best, the church helps us to find spiritual health. It helps us find meaning in our lives. We come into this world alone, folks, and we leave it in a very solitary way. But those who are fortunate among us find good company on the journey of life. The second story is from Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her little book, I love this title. Women Who Run with the Wolves. Tells a story about an older dying man, Native American. He's about to die, and he calls his people in to his side, and he gives each one of them a sturdy stick to every member of the tribe and family. And then he instructs them, now you break your stick. And with some effort, they all snap their sticks in half. And then he tells them, this is how it is when the soul is alone without anyone. It can be easily broken. And then the old man gives each of his kin, another stick and says, now this is how I would like you to live after I'm gone. Put your sticks together in bundles. Now break the bundles in half. And of course, no one can break their sticks when they're bundled together. And the old man smiles and says, you are stronger when you stand with another soul, because together you cannot be broken. It is true that no matter how strong you think you are, physically, mentally, emotionally, in community you're stronger. In community, we can become a force to be reckoned with, as this community has learned over the years. In community, someone's going to ask the hard questions that maybe we don't want to deal with, those big issues of life. In community, we celebrate, we commiserate together the significant moments of life, birth, coming of age, graduation, weddings, memorials, and death. The great Lily Tomlin used to say, we're all in this together by ourselves. What a brilliant saying, because both statements are true. We have a need, both personal autonomy, but we also need community support. If you go too far either direction, if you lose too much autonomy, you lose yourself. But if you have no community, you're alone. A very significant study was undertaken here in the United States recently, and 2 questions were asked of a sample group. The first question was, over the last 6 months, with whom did you discuss important matters with? And number 2, how many friends outside of your family do you see and speak to at least once a week? A quarter of the people, 25% surveyed, said they had not discussed important matters with a single person in 6 months. And the average number of friends outside of home and family that people spoke to at least once a week was about 2. That number, by the way, has been going down for decades. Americans are getting more and more isolated. Even with the advent of social media like Facebook, we may be connected to more and more people, and we know more and more about them, but there's less and less sitting down face contact. And this is a real social problem for society. Community is the antidote to isolation. In our daily living, we're all thrown off balance, probably more than we want to admit. Our focus, our priorities, they often spin off in erratic circles of busyness and tiredness and frustration. Our connections here in worship, in conversations, they expose us to new insights. In quiet moments of reflection, in small group meetings, or maybe going on a treat, all these connections help us to recapture our focus and a good, true direction in life. I cannot imagine life without a spiritual community serving as the stone in the pond of my life. The third story I share with you is by Veronica Goins. She's an African-American Presbyterian minister, serves up in the Bay Area. And she remembers and tells a story that when she was about 7 years old, her best friend got lost one day. This little girl ran up and down the streets of the town, but she couldn't find a single landmark she could identify. And as you can imagine, at 7, she was scared and frightened. Finally, a policeman stopped and offered to assist her. So he put her as a passenger in the squad car, and they drove around until finally she saw her church. And she pointed it out to the policeman, and she said to him firmly, "You can let me off here. This is my church, and I can always find my way home from here." Likewise, when we get lost, and we all do from time to time in a number of ways, the church is the place, I believe, from which you can find your way home again. This is particularly true in times of pain and loss and suffering and grieving. As a pastor, I've seen too many persons over the years, not in the church, but people who would come to the church who had had no community, who had suffered a devastating loss, and they had no spiritual community. They may have had a strong family. They may have had some friends. They may have felt they were strong enough themselves to pull themselves through the crisis. But often they felt vulnerable and isolated. And so when those ill winds of life blow and they bend and threaten to break us, it's a spiritual community like a church that can help shelter us and offer us a home. That's why community is important. But now, how involved in this community do you have to be? Can't you just loiter around the edges of the community a little bit? What about membership? Do you have to go that far? Groucho Marx once sent a telegram to the exclusive Friars Club in Hollywood. Do you remember this one that read, "Please accept my resignation. I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member." Maybe you don't feel yet ready to become a member. Maybe you're not the member type. Maybe you resist membership because you've been members before and you experienced some hurt in another religious organization. So maybe you don't trust spiritual communities, no matter how progressive they claim to be. Well, Church of the Foothills, for all of its charms, it's not perfect either. But being a member of this church is a lot more than just joining a club or the Chamber of Commerce. It's a way of saying, I belong, that I care, and that people care about me, and that we share some common values here. And most important of all, it means we're committed to following the ways of Jesus Christ. We are here in this church because of an invitation. We heard a calling. We decided we wanted to join this merry band of followers of Christ. Now, quite honestly, we're all ambivalent, let's be honest, at times about being here. There's a lot of joy here, but sometimes, beyond our ecstasy, we're also not sure. Ego, though, needs to be drawn into something larger and deeper and more noble than just ourselves. But there's still dread and fear. Oh gosh, all that responsibility I'll be given, resistance to summons to serve, have to enter into new relationships, make lifetime commitments to these other flawed and fragile human beings. I have to change my routine, enter into a new one, leave the comfort of home to show up at what time? 9:15 in the morning on Sunday? Yeah, you got to plant some new roots here in this strange community. And sometimes that means you got to let go of old habits. But that's what's required to enjoy the expansiveness and the life here in community. The Spirit calls us to both the joy and the pain of life in this unpredictable place we call church. Jesus proclaimed, he made an announcement. Turn from your previous ways of living and thinking. A new community of God is at hand. So come join our merry band, he said. And in times of loss and struggle, as well as times of celebration and passage, the church will be here. And it will bring meaning to your life. It'll enrich the good times, I promise you, beyond measure. That's a promise I'll make to you. And for those bad times, it'll be here to lean on. And so I'm here to remind all of you, old members, new members, those considering being members, this is a treasure here. And we should never take it for granted, because we swim regularly in this pond. This stone we call church can truly be the center from which we always find our way home. That's what I believe about church. What about you?